What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Yankees Farm Report. Today, I have Marcus Zappia with me, the great John Brophy, and introducing Aaron Lichstrahl to you all. How you guys doing today?
Good, Carlos. Thanks for having me again.
As always, Marcus.
Yeah, doing well, thank you. I'm happy to join and talk Yankees prospects. Nothing better.
Is there not? What's up, John? How you been?
Hey, how's it going, Carlos? It's a gorgeous day, 72 and sunny in Tampa.
Not for what happened today with the Yankees, though. So let's just get right into it. I mean, going over the past week or so. Actually, before I get into it, I just want to say what's up to some of the channel members. Tina, how you doing? Diver, Tim, Donnie, SSB, D'Onofrio, and of course the return of Joan, who I've been asking you guys about for the longest. Finally got in contact, and happy to see Joan back in the chats. Getting into it, let's start with you, Marcus. Who has been standing out to you over the past week or so far of everything you've seen?
So I'm happy that all of the George Lombard noise is legitimate, and it's great to see him performing in front of people and being what you thought he could be, and maybe pretty quickly. Maybe some of the talk of he should break camp with them as their third baseman should calm down. But that's just, people get overzealous. They're looking for something to get excited about right now, and that's great. But it's nice to see what he's doing. The Alexander Vargas show is still going on, which is great. And I still think the most interesting man in the room is Spencer Jones. I mean, I don't think these numbers hold up right now, but I took a look at his stats with 20 at bats in, OPS over 1,000, 10 strikeouts and 20 at bats. That's the Spencer Jones experience, and he's just a really interesting guy. So that's something maybe we could talk about later, but those guys jump out at me.
Aaron?
Yeah, I'll go the easy route, but Will Warren has maybe become the most important prospect in the Yankees system, not named Jason Dominguez. Obviously the very bad news about Garrett Cole, and not as terrible, but still tough news with Luis Gil. He's in line to be the fifth starter. They'll either have to choose between him or Carlos Carrasco. And Will Warren, his issue when he, honestly, even in AAA, but really when he in his cup of coffee with the team last year, was it's not as much the stuff but the sequencing. And it really seems so far this spring training, the sequencing has been a lot better. His changeup shape has been improved. It has a lot more depth to it now. Not, it's making it easier. It's making it tougher, I should say, for left-handers to lay off of. So they, just with this improved pitch mix, he has a really good slider, fastball, cutter. We can pitch, to both lefties and righties. He might be having to start, and I don't want to say he's, we don't need him to be throwing a 3 ERA, but if he can be pitching to 4 ERA, that's something that will be very crucial for the 3 months while we wait for Luis Gil's return.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement there. He's definitely become very important to the Yankee system. One thing I don't know when it happened. I didn't notice, but I know he used to have a 6-pitch repertoire. And he's mostly, I haven't seen the last outing, but I see he's mostly gone to 4 pitches.
Yeah, I believe it's the changeup, the slider, the fastball, and I believe it's cutter or sinker. I can't remember which one, but
sinker.
Yeah, sinker. Yes, that's right. But yeah, no, it's he's throwing, it's the slider and the sinker, or the fastball for righties, and the sinker slider or sinker changeup to lefties. So he has a nice little split that he can throw either way, and that's gonna, being able to control both sides of the plate, that's gonna be the big thing.
Bro.
So my pitcher that I'm going to choose hasn't actually made a lot of appearances. He's only pitched in 5 innings. But in those 5 innings, he has allowed only 1 hit. He hasn't given up any runs, and he has a whip of 0.40. And the guy that I'm talking about is Yoendris Gomez. The way that I look at it is he's probably in line to be a bullpen guy just because he can go those long innings if they really need him to. Mm-hmm. Kind of like the situation that, I don't know, I guess like Clark Schmidt might have had today. If you get someone that bombs, 2 or 3 innings, they give up like 5 runs, you need someone that's not going to burn that bullpen and go, they can go the 4 innings if they really need to. And then my offensive guy, excuse me, that I'm going to pick is JC Escarra, because I know his story is he was an Uber driver, he was in Indy Ball, he was in, the Mexican League, all that kind of thing.
Mm.
But we also need to really look at the performance that he's put up. He's got a really good arm. His pop time is really good. I haven't really timed it. But he's gone, because the stats that I have are prior to today's games. 10 for 25 with a slash line of 400, 423, 640, and 1.063. You can't sneeze at that. That's if the Yankees wanted a backup catcher. I mean, I love Ben Rice. I've covered him throughout the whole time he's, from first game all the way up. I'm absolutely rooting for Escarra. I believe he absolutely deserves that backup catcher role, and especially given
he had a single off Paul Skeens today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
saw
that.
That's
Yeah,
what I saw. Yeah, that's.
It was 101.
You gotta feel good about that.
Yeah, I think it was 101 off the bat.
So, with the versatility that he has, he could play right field. I don't think they would do that, just given the depth utility that they have. But
yeah, let's not do that.
No,
let's not continue to play guys out of position.
At this point, I don't see why they would do something different. Nothing against Alex Wilson. I don't think it's worth it to have the righty-lefty thing. I don't think it's that big of a deal that you're going to take a guy like Escarra and send him to AAA. He hasn't done anything to make you think that this isn't a real hitter. So, and if he can catch, which it looks like he can, I don't see why they do something different.
It was definitely a different topic when it was Jose Trevino and then a top prospect in Austin Wells that put up the splits. But Austin Wells is certified. Obviously we want him starting behind the plate. I would say at least 100 games. So at this point, the splits really shouldn't matter when you have a guy who's going to be behind the plate most of the season. Whereas last year, it's much easier to make that conversation of Jose Trevino. Do you really want him starting 100+ games? Obviously, he got injured, so he couldn't even anyways. But I agree. I think Escarra has been the best performing. He provides the best mix of defense and hitting amongst the options that they have. And, it's good to see him getting the recognition from the fan base so far.
And look, unfortunately, the roster maneuverability just became less of an issue for the worst possible reason. I mean, they're going to be able to put guys on the 60-day disabled list, but Escarra's on the 40-man and Wilson's not. So you don't even have to clear a spot for him. I just think that the road is open and they should take it.
And something that I've been thinking of is the fact that Ben Rice played third base in high school / prep school. So I wonder now he hasn't played it professionally. So I'm curious if that's an avenue that the Yankees consider. I mean, they have the depth, so I don't think it's really that much of a concern, but I think he might be a number 3 guy right now.
Yeah, sounds an awful lot like he's their DH.
Yeah, I would lean no, but then again, Jazz Chisholm, we talked about before we went on, he had never played third base, and then he became, he was quite solid there. But Chisholm's much more of an athlete than Ben Rice is, so I mean that definitely is good versatility to have with Ben Rice.
And it'd be good to have Rice as a third catcher, where your emergency catcher in the past was Ronald Torreyes. It'd be nice to have a guy who could actually catch, who's your third catcher.
Yeah.
I mean, it creates flexibility in games. If you need to get another, it's whether he comes in for the last couple innings to play behind the plate, or, it's even if you just want to give him a start there once a week where you say, hey, I like this matchup. We can deal with this, Ben Rice being the catcher for one game. It's definitely an interesting part of the equation. How much has he caught? He caught today, right?
Escarra?
No, Ben Rice. Yeah, I believe he caught in the game today against the Pirates. I think he was in. So, it's definitely intriguing that they're working him back there.
Not to step on Carlos here, but what do we think about Pereira being optioned? Did anybody think that this was a guy who sounded like there was some noise that he could make the team? It caught me a little off guard.
That was gonna be my guys that he's standing out. I mean, he's hitting really well. I think he was hitting near 400. I was a little surprised that he was sent down today, being that they're right now. The funny thing is that I had always complained about how they were 2 right-handed and now they're 2 left-handed. And I thought Everson would have provided a little bit of balance in that. in that regard, especially, since they have a hole in the DH spot. I thought he could have been an option there.
So my logic is that when I've been at the stadium on camp days or whatever, they have Pereira doing rehab stuff. So my logic is that they sent him down to get more reps in AAA. I don't know how many options he has, but my logic is that he'll get those reps in AAA. He'll get the swings if he's DH, whatever. When he's ready, they can call him up or keep him as a taxi squad kind of guy.
Right. He hasn't played defense yet, correct?
No, I think he's slated to play on the 13th. I want to say is what I thought Boone had said.
Yeah, because
I believe that sounds right.
He's still doing long toss stuff in the outfield. When I was there on Saturday, he was doing drills. So he was doing defensive drills, but it was just catching. It wasn't throwing. And that's what it was. Him, Grisham, and Judge were the group.
Yeah, I would definitely think the defense part of it, and I obviously he's been great this spring, but this is a guy who only played in 40 games last year before the injury. If you hear, the way I'm sure the way this roster might be, or this lineup might be looking with, Judge going into DH some days and maybe Wells, while they have this gap, do you really want Pereira up there right away when he might be playing twice a week, 3 times a week, maybe at most? I think giving him a month, maybe 2 months to just get consistent at bats, and then, it's the Yankees, injuries are going to happen. Even if they don't, though, it might be there might be a point where you say, hey, you've been hitting well in AAA. Now we're going to give you a chance to establish yourself here. I think he has a role to play this season, so I'm not upset or worried about him being sent down yet.
And I think this is his last option, I think. So after this.
I was going to say one more thing about Everson is just that he just can't shake the injuries, man. I don't think he's had a clean season yet, if I'm not mistaken. And it's unfortunate because when he's in the lineup, it does a lot of damage.
But you could say that with a lot of the Yankees, the whole organization, really. Top to bottom. You can see where it is at the top. And then you look at, I saw Brendan Beck, I think, for the first time in my life the other day because he'd been injured.
Wow.
And I'm like, who the heck is this guy? I don't recognize him. And I have to look at the roster, and it says Brendan Beck. Oh, okay. You say so.
That's good. Was he throwing?
Yeah, he when I left, he was still on the mound, so he'd probably gotten in. If I had to guess, I think he was probably getting 40 pitches in.
Okay, that's good to hear. It seems like such a long time ago. It's crazy how it was only 2020 when he was drafted, but he's pitched maybe 20 games for the Yankees.
Yeah, and
so last year he pitched 10 games, I think.
It was something like that before Tommy John, or it was something like
it was Tommy John pretty much right after he got drafted, I believe.
But then he had another surgery, I thought.
Yeah, he did. I don't think it was Tommy John, but it was I can't remember what it was, but I know he did miss all of last year with it as well.
My other guy was going to be Will Warren. You guys already spoke about him. I think he could possibly be this year's Louis Heel, especially the way he's looked in spring training. I think in spring training last year, he also looked good right up until the end when he kind of hit a wall, and then he went to AAA, and he got bombed at AAA, if I remember correctly. So
one of the stats that I have of Will Warren is, and I'll read you the quote that I have from my article that I'm writing. Last spring, Warren had an H through 9 of 10.57, whereas this spring he has reduced it to 3.09. So that's huge. If you're not giving up those hits, that means you're not getting the guys on base. I don't have the BB through 9, but it was pretty average. I think it was like 4 or something like that. 3 or 4 was the BB through 9. It was something like that. But
anybody else stand out to you guys?
I just want to give. I just want to give a shout out to Cam Schlittler. He's a guy in my own freelance I've written about as someone to I think could be really good. He a standout in A+. He was in Hudson Valley. He was top 10 in strikeout percentage and top 3 in ground ball percentage. That's a very good combination of stats. If you're striking guys out and when you're not, you're getting ground balls. That's what you want out of a pitcher. So, Obviously he got beat up on today. And I think his previous outing wasn't great either, but it's good to see him get a couple starts with the organization during spring training, and hopefully he'll hit the ground running in Double-A. And I think it's something we're going to talk about a little later, but given our pitching situation, he could be in line to be on the 40-man at some point and start a game for the Yankees.
I was going to say real quick, I think he was the pitcher of the year at the Sally. Cam.
I think you're right.
Yeah, he was the pitcher of the year there.
So going back to that Will Warren thing, it seemed like from last year to this year, he had to take that last step in development, refinement, refine the pitches, the sequencing, the game planning, the command, all that stuff. Schlittler looks to me like last year Will Warren, and so maybe it's a next year thing with him, but if you start lining guys up prospect wise, he's not too far down the list from people that might get a tap on the shoulder.
I think real quick, I think someone else that deserves the recognition that I think wasn't really on anybody's radar going into spring training was Eric Raiselman. I think the performance that he's put up as a setup guy, as a closer, I don't know if he's going to be one of the September call-ups. I would say he's probably in line for that right now, but obviously it's way too early. You never know what's going to happen.
He needs to be on the mound. That's the big thing. That's just he hasn't been able to stay on the mound consistently. But I agree. If he's able to pitch in the minors this year, it's a real possibility. He's with the team.
Definitely has back of the bullpen stuff, and I love Razor. I'm a big fan of his. What do you guys think of the show that Alexander Vargas has been putting on?
Yeah,
please be real. Just please be real. That's all I can say.
That's my thing.
I think it's. Go on, John.
I was going to say, just kind of looking at him now and looking at what I saw in Tampa. So I pulled up his stats earlier because I was going to talk about Vargas. 100 games in Tampa, he was hitting 203 with a 582 OPS. And now he's hitting, 700 or something wacky like that.
I think he's hitting a little above 700.
8 for 11 or something.
Yeah. It's wild. And it's
11,
funny.
2 home runs, 2 doubles, something like that.
I interviewed him when he was in Tampa, and he's like, I know I'm a 5-tool guy. It's in me. We just have to uncover it. Mm-hmm. I think we've uncovered it. We're getting there.
I mean, I would.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I spoke to him on the podcast last month. I want to say, and one of the things he did say was that he, for the first time, probably has taken his health a lot more serious. Right, he's been working out a lot more. He focused on putting on some extra weight or some muscle, and that could be it. That could be what unlocked him a bit. He still has some work to do, and I'm very happy for what he's doing.
The explosive,
I think
quick twitch guy when they got him, but rail thin. So you wondered how somebody had enough strength. And John, you saw him his feet would move in the box, and some of the swings that he would take. I don't know what we have here, but
kind of hacky.
Yeah, clearly a raw guy at first, and so he's needed some time. And now he didn't really square the ball he hit out yesterday, and it still went. There's explosiveness there. So if this is something that he doesn't need to be 30 homers or anything like that. He hit 4 homers last year?
Yeah, 4
career.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think also
3 and 11 at bats so far in spring training. There's something. I know it's spring training. Caveat: this means nothing, but it can mean something. And I hope
I always laugh when people say stuff like that. That spring training means nothing, but then if a guy's hitting a $105, oh my God, he's only hitting 105. But I thought spring training didn't mean anything, which is you can't have both ways,
right?
I just think with Vargas, I think I think he's a great example of even sometimes in I maybe fall into the hypocrisy of I think comparing it to Jason Dominguez, you see fans saying, "Oh, he's been around forever, he's not good." I like a lot of rational people say he's 22 years old. He's been signed with the team since he's 16, but he didn't play till he was 18, 19 years old. He still has a lot to untap. And I had maybe wrongfully gotten some prospect fatigue with Vargas, but the truth of it is he's only going into his I guess he's he'll be 23 all of this season. And, maybe he doesn't have the upside that he did when he was 19 years old coming to Florida. But there still might be a solid player in there who can, at the very least, maybe he's a guy who can become a trade chip to help you get that piece we need if we're going to be competing for a World Series. I think that there still definitely could be a player there, and it was probably wrong of me to consider him a non-prospect because there still might be. He's shown something that I haven't seen in him since he's been in the U.S.
And that's
I think
why
one of the biggest things
passing the
about him,
eye test for the first time for me, and that's why I'm excited beyond the numbers.
I think for me, one of the biggest things about him is that he basically has his confidence back, and we spoke about that when I spoke to him, and you could tell when he was at Somerset, that he had a bit of a pep in his step. He had a bit of a swagger. Where before that, I hate to say it, but he kind of looked defeated, like towards the end of his time at Hudson Valley. His shoulders were slumped. He didn't have that big smile that he always has, and granted, things aren't going well, so you start to question yourself. And I think once he got that confidence back, it started to pay off for him, and you're seeing that in spring training now.
And I think the versatility with his bat being a switch hitter, I think that's a really big deal. But I don't know if we've seen him hit. Because I don't have the stats in front of me for that. I don't know if we've seen him hit right-handed, but it's probably a lot of like what we were going to see with Jason Dominguez, where he's better on the left side of the plate versus the right side of the plate. As far as the eye test goes, stats show that he is about equal, though.
Yeah. He. I mean, last year, just looking at his batting splits, honestly, he did very little hitting as a right-handed batter. He had 37 plate appearances as a righty in 2024 versus 238 as a lefty.
It's hard to develop.
So obviously very small sample size, but it was a 649 OPS as a right-handed batter as opposed to a 674 as a lefty. So it's hard to draw too much conclusion there, but maybe it's not as unbalanced as Dominguez or in a more extreme case Arias.
And maybe this is a non-point, but is Braden Shoemake hurt? Because if he's not, that's a 40-man roster middle infielder who's not. Vargas is playing over him in the games, so I'm wondering.
I don't think I've even seen him.
I think he's got a handful of at bats, but
he's an easy. When you're obviously, there's going to be Garrett Cole to the 60-man and maybe Luis Gil.
Yeah,
but
I agree with that.
That's an easy place to see someone, coming in. I mean, we can get. That's definitely an easy place for a bat like Vargas or maybe a Rafael Flores to take if we get to a point where we need one of those guys to come up.
I'm just saying he's getting in games pretty regularly over a 40-man roster player. I think that means something.
Agreed, Joan. Mossman here is saying Spencer Jones is who he is. When he hits the ball, he does damage, but he's a strikeout machine. As much as I want him to succeed, we're gonna have to trade him before it's too late. I mean, I'm always gonna be an advocate of if I don't have to make a trade, I don't have to make a trade.
Just as a thought exercise. All right. So going back to those first 20 at bats, and there's 22 plate appearances. So it's apples to oranges. It's minor league numbers. His numbers last year, he was just south of 800 OPS, maybe. But anyway, over 200 strikeouts. Only player I can think of in the major leagues that does something like this, Joey Gallo, when the Yankees decided they wanted to acquire him. That's about the player he was. And we saw what happened to him when he was in New York. Nobody wanted him there after that. Can a guy survive? Can you make almost every out as a strikeout if you're an 800 OPS guy in the major leagues and you hit 20-plus home runs? So if you just focus on the offensive numbers, not on the outs he makes, they're good, but he doesn't put the ball in play otherwise. Have we ever seen that?
So almost like a 3 outcome.
Yeah, without as much, with a little more hit and a little less walk.
I'm trying to think of O'Neal Cruz is the guy that comes to my mind. O'Neal Cruz was a 30% plus strikeout guy, and he was still a decently productive hitter. He's not there yet, Spencer Jones. He still has plenty of work to do, but you're not trading for anything right now of relevancy. But he could become If he gets that down to where he's able to strike out, let's just say 32% in the major leagues,
Then he's a
he's
star.
and he's hitting 20 plus home runs. Yeah, it's that's it's not it's not your star player. He's not going to be he's not the linchpin of a lineup. But if that's a guy who you're hitting in the lower part, plus he has speed, he has above average defense in
Yes.
center, probably
You can
plus in the
pencil him for a long
corners.
time.
That's a player. That's a good squad player.
And hits the ball.
And also, a lot of people forget, Spencer Jones has 2 seasons as a full-time hitter under his belt?
Correct.
Yeah, he's been very young. I think it was Smith Brinkner who writes for the Yankees for Baseball Prospectus, but Spencer Jones basically from his time in college has the same amount of pro at bats as Xavier Isaac, who was dropped out of high school by the Rays, but he's in the 70s, 60s, I think, of top 100 lists, and Spencer Jones is not on the list. And I mean, I understand, it's a what have you done for me lately, and I would probably do the same, but it is a valid point that just because he's a little more advanced in age, he still has more runway than you would typically think for a top prospect who's 24.
And with his size, he's going to need some time. It's the same thing. I'm not comparing him to Judge. I'm just bringing it up that Judge was not 22 when he made it to the major leagues.
Okay, I just want. Sorry to interrupt. This is going back to Spencer Jones real quickly. So, of qualified hitters last year, there were 4 guys who had K percentages over 30%. Ellie De La Cruz, 25 home runs, 118 WRC plus, 60 C. That's not going to be Spencer Jones. But then you look at maybe O'Neal Cruz, 30% strikeout rate, 110 WRC plus, good defender. He moved to center, 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. Colton Cowser was the 30% guy. He was, almost rookie of the year. And then Zach Galoff, who, didn't have as good of a year, but he's, still a, well-regarded young player who could bounce back. Those are 4 guys all in their. I don't think anyone was older than 25 or 26 of them. There is a pathway for being a high strikeout hitter who hits bombs when he does hit it and steals bases. So
I
definitely don't think there's
Gallo is that his in zone whiff rate is the thing that jumps out. I don't think Gallo's not a chase guy. I don't think Jones is either, but he's swinging and missing like almost 50% in the strike zone. That's the concern. So at the big league level, what does that look like when he's doing that at Double-A?
Yeah.
Just real quick.
As of right now, this player doesn't translate to the MLB.
Yeah.
I pulled up Braden Shoemake's spring statistics. He has played in 3 games, made 6 at-bats. Last played February 26th. He is 0 for 6 with a 143 on-base percentage.
That's what I mean. I wonder if he's hurt.
Probably.
I don't know.
Yankees being the Yankees.
Yeah.
So a question here. It's basically saying if Volpe doesn't hit this year, what's next? I mean, I think that this has to be the year that Volpe hits.
Yeah.
He's had 2 seasons under his belt. He looked good last season in the fall. I'm hoping it translates over to this year. I mean, he hasn't looked great in spring training, but what does spring training matter, right, Marcus?
Yeah, when it suits us, that's what we say.
So
go on, John.
My thing with Volpe that I've noticed with him, and I've noticed this since he was in Tampa, he doesn't really blow up offensively until May or June. So you're going to see a really, really quiet early spring from him. And then he'll really start hitting right around Memorial Day, and then it'll really get explosive around July. That's like half the season, though.
Do you remember the start he got up to last year, where it was not only
we were talking about all-star starter.
The approach was so good, it was like, oh, this is the guy we want, and then he just stopped. The approach changed, and he went back to chasing out of the zone. I don't know that player, and then that player came back in the postseason. So if we can find a way to get that guy more consistently, I feel pretty good about it.
I think a big part of last year. I think a big part of it was he was not in his rookie year. He was kind of selling out for power, probably more than he should have been. And that was still a 20 home run guy, but wasn't a productive hitter. This past year, it seemed like he wasn't trying to do that. He was just trying to almost be Jeter-esque, just trying to put the ball in play. But when you're swinging a soft bat, he was getting a lot of BABIP luck, and all of it went away. I think the big thing that we saw in the playoffs was his bat speed was up about 2 miles per hour. And I know a lot of people, might think, oh, well, what does that matter? He's still not. That's when you're hitting the ball harder. Those squeakers, become liners up the infield. It's 2 miles per hour bat speed. That might be a ball that the shortstop is getting to, off on the grass and not on the dirt. So if he's hitting the ball harder, I believe that gives him a better chance of being a bit of a better hitter. He's not good enough of a contact hitter to not swing the bat hard and get a little bit more velocity. So, it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep that going into the major league season. I think as a spring training, I think he hit the hardest ball he's ever hit on one of those home runs he hit.
I think it's 110.
So that's just what I want to see, because I'm a Volpe believer. I know one of the things scouts raved about him out of high school was he's a high makeup guy. He has extremely high work ethic, and obviously, that can only take you so far. But I believe, with that work, he could become. We don't need him to be a 120 OPS plus guy. We need him if he can be. Last year was like 85, I think. If he becomes a 95 WRC plus guy, that 10 extra points, that's impactful.
We'll take the 120 though.
When Volpe came up, I thought he was going to be a guy that hits about 240, 20 to 25 home runs and steals about 30 bases. That's who I thought he was going to be. I think for the past 2 seasons, he's been in between, right? He doesn't really know who he is at the plate. It seems, right? He should be a guy that's going from gap to gap, and once in a while, put it over the fence.
In my opinion, he gets himself out more than pitchers get him out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times he offers the pitches where, like, I don't know why he's swinging at that. And here's a pitch you don't need to swing at, and you're rolling over it. There's way more times where I feel like his approach is what's holding him back from being that next level of hitter.
Regarding Pereira right here, Pereira is going to be the Yankees' unsung hero this year. I think he's going to hit 20 to 25 home runs, 60 to 70 RBIs. I think he has the talent to do that. It's a matter of getting him those at-bats.
Obviously he didn't look good in his cup of coffee in 23, but I think that's a big thing we're seeing in the MLB these days. A lot of these guys don't look good in their first go around, so I'm not holding that against him. I would love to see him do it. I think he's capable of it. Just get him some reps in AAA and get him up in late May, early June, and let him go.
I think last season when he did come up, he was playing injured. Yankees just didn't say anything at the time, but I'm pretty sure he was playing injured.
Yeah, I think so too. But so my thing with Pereira is, so hypothetically speaking, let's say that's the case. He gets his reps in AAA. Where's he going to play in the Bronx? There's no spot for him in the outfield. And then if we're going to have Rice as a DH, that means you're going to be flip-flopping Rice and Pereira, and then that you're going to be sacrificing at-bats and stats and all sorts of different things there. So someone would be the sacrificial lamb in that regard.
I mean, I don't know if it'll happen. Go on.
I don't like Everson playing 2-3 times a week, because to me it doesn't work. He's a guy that needs at bats, because I've said this before. He could look terrible for 1 week, and then the following week he goes on a tear. So his production comes in bunches, but the valleys are also in bunches for him. So he needs as many at bats as possible. 2-3 times a week is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So at the attrition, it seems to me like Pereira is a guy where he's not going to force his way in. It's going to be, we're going to call on him if we need him. And if we need him, that means something bad happened at the Bronx.
Probably.
One other guy I did want to mention. I want to say he led the league. Zach Messenger to me is one of the guys that the Yankees could depend on this year. Should be headed for Scranton. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he led Eastern in, I would say, innings pitched and in WHIP. What are your guys' thoughts on Zach Messenger?
I have an initial thought. So I saw him back up. Is it Williams? So on Saturday, it was Fried and Williams were the starters. And then Brendan Beck, and Messenger were the relievers. Messenger looked the best out of all four of them. Fried and Williams were giving up some serious hits. They were giving up lots of extra base hits. I don't know what it was, or they're playing with stuff, whatever. Messenger looked really good. Now, granted, I did only see him for about 20-ish pitches. Same with Brendan Beck, because I just wanted a little bit of time to see him before I wanted to see Jerson Alejandro on the other side. So, that's the fun with spring training. You got to split yourself between the two fields. I wouldn't be surprised if it were Messenger and Razelman that were call-ups later on this year.
No, definitely no argument for me there.
Messenger needs to not have me watch him pitch. That's been a problem. I've seen him live twice, and he got lit up. I watched him twice on MILB TV and got lit up both of those times. So I like him. I like the stuff. I just haven't seen him good, and so it's clouded my judgment there.
No soup for you. That's what that is.
I should just turn the other way and listen. Maybe it'll be
Next up, I wanted to bring up with Jason Dominguez, and like I told you guys earlier, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, man. But Yankee fans need to be patient here, man. I don't know how else to preach this. Yankee fans are not used to watching a prospect get that final lap of development at the major league level. It's besides Volpe, it's been a very long time. You got to give the kid some, runway, as the Yankees like to say. I mean, at least a year before you start criticizing him. I know one of the Yankee content creators posted a video of him today in left field. I mean, like, that's absolutely ridiculous, man. That ball was like at least 10, 12 feet away. He was not catching it. I don't care who the hell he is. I don't care if he was Ricky Henderson. There's just no way he was getting to that ball. And it even looked foul. I mean, just the constant criticism of anything that happens his way, even a fly ball, anything, they want to post content of it and just point it out. Like, it's straight up clickbait. It's disgusting to me.
I think what annoys me about that is obviously, it's going to be we're going to see some of the negative stuff happen. It's a guy who's never really played left field, and he's going to be playing one of the tougher left fields. But I remember I saw a tweet from, I forgot who it was, one of the beat reporters down there, and he said in the first inning that Dominguez made a really nice read, and he got over to a well-hit ball in the gap. And where's the highlight of that? Why aren't we show it? I understand the bad plays obviously get more attention, but we should be talking about the plays where he is doing what he needs to be. At least if we're going to be hammering on him like this when he does something wrong. I don't even think he did anything wrong on that play, but yeah, it is upsetting to constantly see people putting him down.
It's straight up clickbait, man. Rage bait.
Yeah.
I'm a big Dominguez fan. At the risk of catching flack for it, I don't think he's a good outfielder. That doesn't mean he can't be a good outfielder. And that's why I'm not an advocate for putting him in center, because I think he'd have similar issues there. But there's a narrative that gets started, and then people just look for confirmation of that narrative. If he hits coming out of the chute, nobody's going to talk about the random defensive play here or there. If he struggles at the plate, then the noise about his defense is just going to get louder.
And let me make. I'm sorry, John. I want to make a point on that real quick. I tweeted last week about Jason moving to center field. My thing is not because I'm always going to be a Jason defender, but my thing is not so much about moving him to center field because of this or because of that, but mainly because I feel like defense is not something that he should be worried about this early on, right? He's probably more comfortable in center field. Why not make him as comfortable as possible? I mean, I don't want to say it, but the Yankees really need his bat to go off this year. They need for him to be able to replicate some of that production that they're going to lose from Soto. They need his bat in the lineup. Don't give him anything else to have to worry about, right? Because if his defense starts failing, he doesn't catch a fly ball, they start making videos, memes, trolling him, whatever it is. Next thing you know, he could be a head case, and he turns into Gary Sanchez.
I think it's a bit of a catch-22. Do you play him in center? And yes, he's a little bit more comfortable, but it's, that's still a position he's not great at. And, that's the linchpin of your defense in the outfield. And, he's making a lot of mistakes out there, but he's, maybe not as stressed about it. Or do you keep putting him in left field? And even though it's technically easier, especially when you're on the road, like you were saying, does that get to his head where he's thinking, oh, I got to be doing all these things in left, and it affects him at the plate? It's a tough spot for them to be in. I'm with Marcus. I think they're doing what they should be, at least right now. There's no reason not to play him in left field during spring training, but it definitely is. We need that bat, and there's no good way to go about his defensive positioning right now.
You got to keep throwing him out there.
What I wanted to say earlier was something that I mentioned in the NYYU Discord is that looking at Brando Maella this past Saturday, his defense is what I would consider a lot more major league level than Dominguez, in the regard that his routes are a lot cleaner than what Dominguez runs, because Dominguez is just kind of all over the place. He's a dog trying to chase a ball. For as a terrible analogy, but Brando Maella runs clean routes just like Spencer Jones. Cole Gabrielson is another one that's got really good routes. One of the best defenders, I think, in the organization as far as an outfielder goes. I think he's not getting enough recognition as well.
That was a name I was going to bring up because he's starting to show up pretty regularly as a substitute. I think they like what they see.
Threw a guy at home. I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, from left field. That was an absolute laser.
And almost had to play at second. I wish I knew what game it was, but was all over the ball on a carom and made a great throw. And he looks sharp.
Yeah.
Who is this Gabrielson we're talking about?
Cole Gabrielson.
Yeah, the Yankees love their undrafted free agents. That's another guy who, that's going to be something to watch in Double-A this year.
And I don't want to make excuses for Dominguez, but in the broadcast, Jack Curry mentioned that he talked to Buck Showalter, who said, do not make judgments about outfielders in spring training when you have single deck stadiums and the sun is brutal. It's just not the same environment that they're going to be playing in when they're playing big league games.
Yeah, and I can echo that because I've been in the outfield during Tarpin's batting practice just for giggles. It was the breakfast and brunch and batting practice, whatever the hell it's called. And I was just kind of out there with one of the Tarpin's employees that I know, and I'm standing there. It's like only 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't see anything because the sun is reflecting off the seats. Now, granted, in a Tarpin's game, you're only going to have 100 people in the seats anyway, so that's kind of normal. But, yeah, I mean, you figure you're not going to have that kind of a problem in Yankee Stadium. You're not going to have the sun reflecting off the seats because the outfield walls are going to protect it, plus the way that the city is around the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding Brando Maella, I think he's just a very gifted center fielder. Of the highlights that I've seen from him, I'm not saying this is who he is, but he kind of reminds me of like an Adam Jones. I love the way he patrols center field.
I can see that. Yeah,
I'll be at the breakout game, so I'll see him. I don't know who's going to play center field for the Yankees because Spencer's also going to be on that team, but hopefully he gets in that game.
And I'll be there too. I just got my credentials.
Do we maybe want to shift the conversation and talk about the spring breakout game? Because that's, I'm looking forward to that this weekend.
Is it not funny that the breakout roster doesn't have a third baseman either?
Probably because is Jesus Rodriguez on that team?
Yeah, I got. That's why he was going to be starting at third. They got three outfielders on the roster. Josh Moylan listed as an outfielder. Is that?
I thought someone was an infielder.
Josh Moylan is listed as an outfielder. Jesus Rodriguez is listed as a catcher.
Then again, they misspelled Brando's name, so I wouldn't take too much.
Yeah.
I told you that. Remember? I'm like, wait a second. MLB spelled it right. Why can't the Yankees spell it right?
Yeah.
I was just going to look for the MLB roster because something tells me they messed up on there too.
It's good thing.
I mean,
there it is.
It is definitely just funny, I'm looking on the MLB website, for the announcement of it. It's just funny seeing Lombard, Arias, and then Rumfield as your infielders. It's missing a position there.
It's an organizational thing. I want to see what it looks like. Well,
maybe we're just playing shifted the whole game.
It's like slow pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus. I'm thinking he's going to be the third baseman. I would put him at third base. Absolutely.
That's who I would. He's going to be the third baseman.
That's what I would think. It's a 7-inning game, right? It's
anybody not on that roster that you thought would be?
I was surprised by Vargas's omission, to be honest with you.
at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think going into it, yeah, but I wonder when they actually created the rosters, because if they created them before the spring, maybe he was somebody that they wanted to admit. Because if you look at the pictures,
I don't know about that, because if it was created like you say, then probably Brock would have been on it. Lalane would have been on it.
Yeah, I think the thing that highly relevant to this roster is, this is an MLB designed showcase. They want their top 30 list prospects to be
True.
heavily involved in this. And you'll notice a lot of the names, if you look on MLB.com, are top 30 prospects. But obviously we can take away the pitcher. We know Selvage was the shoulder injury. Obviously, Lalane not being on there is telling. The name that stuck out to me was Rock Riggio. He's kind of a back end of a top 30 prospect.
Mhm.
He showed a pretty decent season in Hudson Valley, and he's someone I high on potentially breaking out. And so to see him not on the roster worries me about his status for the season.
I'm a Rock Riggio fan. I asked Josh Norris from Baseball America about him in a chat, what the scouts' opinion of him was, and he said not good coming off of last year. So I choose to be an optimist with him, and I see some good stuff there. But yeah, I'm with you. I thought that might be a name that was on there.
I was just looking at the roster because there's a couple guys missing on the roster that I'm surprised are missing. So like one as an example is I don't see Elijah Dunham, and I don't recall him getting released. So I'm curious.
It's probably because he's not a top 30.
No, on the spring training roster.
Oh, on the spring training.
Oh,
yeah.
We've seen that before, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if he's like a late arrival. I don't know what it is. Because there's, like Alex Mauricio, you look on his Instagram and he's in a hospital. So I don't know if there's something going on with him. I hope all is well, because I was impressed with his stuff. But
yeah, he's really good.
I mean, I just think when you talk about pitchers, most of our, we're a pitching prospect heavy organization. I mean, heck, you look at this class, 3 of our top 4 picks from this most recent draft class are included here, and they haven't even pitched once for the Yankee organization. 4 of our first 5 picks, because Grayson Carter, who isn't even a top 30 prospect, he made this. Honestly, he might be the guy I'm most looking forward to watch pitch. For those who don't know about Grayson Carter, he's a relief pitcher out of Vanderbilt, throws up to 103 miles per hour. He doesn't really know where it's going, but he throws gas.
I think that control applies to a lot of the pitchers in the organization, though.
Well, with that, the look of those pitchers on the roster, a lot of guys, draftees from last year, I'm hoping they take that approach of these guys can all throw an inning maybe, instead of, having Brock Selvage throw 185 pitches like you did.
Showing out.
Yeah.
You would think
nice to see most of these guys.
Yeah, you would think they'd take an all-star game approach and you have a pitcher throw an inning or, like 10, 15 pitches or something like that, just to get everybody in the game. But I think the arm that I'm most intrigued in is the one that the Yankees got for Carlos Narvaez, and that's Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, because we haven't seen him at all. He's been on some of the relief rosters that the Yankees have put out. I think it's like once or twice I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why did the Yankees give up Narvaez for this guy? I mean, I understand it's the depth. I understand, that whole thing. I get that. But it was one of those head scratchers. So I'm intrigued to see him.
Don't forget, they also got about $500K in IFA money.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know why he's on the roster for spring breakout. I would have picked.
I mean, MLB has him as the number 8 prospect, and Baseball America is pretty high on him too. Baseball America has him.
He was in the upper
16th. Yeah. So it's I know that he had some command issues, but everything I've heard about him, from some of the clips I've watched, is he has a really nice fastball slider combination. It's just about a third pitch and getting more control. But I think it's maybe we haven't seen a lot of him, but I think that's probably someone we should get ourselves familiar with, because he could. He's probably going to start the season in Double-A, I would imagine, and he could. He could easily. Like I said with the other guy, he could be in the picture given our current state of our starting rotation.
I was hoping they'd sneak Urena on the roster for spring breakout, but
Same.
yeah.
All right, guys, I'm gonna head out of here. I'll be at Tampa on Thursday, probably be at the complex then, and I'll be at the breakout game. I want to thank you guys all for coming on. Aaron, it was a pleasure. Marcus, it's a pleasure as always. John,
Thank you very much.
you guys have a good night. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming on, guys. We appreciate all of you.
See you
Have a
Saturday
good
night.
one.
Thank you.